But they will feel naturally that they are fine. So there will be no need to do any intellectual compensation.
Cilvēki, kuriem ir mierīgs un patīkams prāta stāvoklis, viņiem šī atbilde, paldies, labi, būs ļoti dabiska. Bet tiem cilvēkiem, kuriem apziņas stāvoklis nav tik labā stāvoklī, tad viņam būs, vienam sakot, iekšēji pretruna atbildēt ar šo frāzi.
So but a person without mental happiness, so a person with a lot of worries, for example, a person with low self-esteem, a person with a lot of mental unhappiness, a lot of anger, usually also a person with a lot of attachment. What was I going to say? So they even though all the outer circumstances, so they have everything they need, but still somehow the mind manages to be unhappy.
Un pat cilvēkiem ir visi kā ārēji nepieciešami apstākļi, lai viņi būtu laimīgi, tomēr, ja viņiem ir zemes pašvērtējums vai pieķērušies ļoti kaut kam, vai viņiem valda citi galvvēlīgi prāt stāvokļi, viņi nebūs laimīgi par spīti tam, ka viņiem ārēji tā viss labi.
So when that mental happiness is gone, it's really the mental happiness that makes the difference. And so if mental happiness is gone, so it can be quite hard to get it back. And so in the meditation, meditation is about generating mental happiness.
Un, ja laimīgais apziņas stāvoklis kaut kur pazūd, tad var būt grūti un varbūt atpakaļ. Un tāpēc meditācijas viens no galvenajiem uzdevumiem ir radīt šo laimīgo apziņas stāvokli.
And the mental happiness will also produce physical happiness.
Un, ja būs laimīgs apziņas stāvoklis, tad radīsies arī fiziskā laimība.
And so if the meditation is done carefully, so if the meditation is done skillfully and correctly, so then it produces the mental happiness, even if it is just done for a short while.
Un tad, ja meditācija tiek veikta prasmīgi un kvalitatīvi, tad prātā radīsies šī laimīga apziņas stāvokļa. Pat ja meditācija tiks veikta tikai uzrautības brīdi.
And so because it produces mental happiness, so it's a pleasant experience that then the person likes to repeat.
Un, ja meditācijas laikā rodas laimīga apziņas stāvokļi, tad radīsies arī dabiska vēlme atkārtot meditāciju vēlreiz un vēlreiz.
We touched on one point, the seat. So we touched on another point, the meditation length. And now we came to talk a little bit about the purpose of meditation and also the element of how to meditate correctly was introduced.
Tad mēs aplūkojam par vienām divus galvenos tematus. Kādai vajadzētu būt meditācijas vietai un sēdeklim. Tad mēs aplūkojam laika faktoru un tagad palūkosimies pēc citiem.
So regarding the way of meditating, so that it's okay. So there's so it's good to know. So we meditate with the mental consciousness.
Ir vērtīgi zināt, ka tas, ar ko mēs meditējam, tā ir mentāla apziņa.
So that's maybe find out some of the things that already practitioners for many years. So for the new students, I don't know if it's useful for them, but maybe for the older students.
Tas varētu būt tāda vērtīgāka informācija priekš tie, kas jau ir pazīstami ilgāku laiku ar budismu un ir vairāk par to painteresējušies, bet droši vien tas nebūs tik skaidrs, ko nozīmē mentāla apziņa priekš tiem, kas ir tikko tas nesacē.
Okay, it's useful for everybody. So like a good way to start the meditation is so one can first briefly, so with a relaxed mind, briefly go through the 5 sense consciousnesses.
Un mēs varam sākt meditāciju tādā veidā, ka mēs īsi pievēršam uzmanību, kas notiek katrā no mentālajām apziņām, kas tiek skaitā katrā no apziņām, galvenais mentālās apziņas.
So we can just with a very relaxed mind. We don't. It doesn't need to be so intense. So just with a very relaxed mind, just identifying briefly so that side. Then usually there's always a sound. That's not auditory consciousness. So, and then we may or may not smell something, but we can remember smell. Taste depends. Sometimes there's something, some residue in the mouth, or we can remember. And then there's a tactile, which usually we can use like usually there's some touch of our clothes in the skin. And so just in this context, in this way, just in a very relaxed way, so it's just identifying. So there's visual consciousness, that's the auditory consciousness. So going like this through the 5 sense consciousnesses, identifying them.
Un tad mēs varam īsi identificēt visas 5 apziņas, sākot ar redzes apziņu, kas parādās tajā dzirdes apziņu, kaut ko dzirdēsim ar sevi, varam iespējams kaut ko sēt oļus, vai apziņu, varbūt notērš vēlētos kaut kādu garšu, varbūt nē, ļoti iespējams skatīties oļus kaut kādu ķermenisku sajūtu, tā kā mēs īsti varam iziet cauri, ko katra no šīm 5 maiņu apziņām jūt.
And then we can sitting there anyway, and then we can sort of see also, then we notice there's a lot more going on. So everything else that is not one of those 5 sense consciousnesses, that's all mental consciousness.
Un tā, kad mēs esam pamanījuši, kas notiek šajos 5 maiņu apziņās, tad mēs droši vien pamanīsim, ka notiek vēl kaut kas, kas sākas parādā šajās 5 apziņās. Tas nozīmē, ka viss pārējais notiekošās attiecās uz mentālo apziņu.
So this can be a very useful way to, a very useful, effective way to initiate the meditation.
Un tas var būt tāds efektīvs veids, kā mēs iesākam meditāciju.
So then we have the object. So the object object makes a big difference.
Un objektam ir speciāli, bet ļoti liela nozīme.
Can we have a consciousness without object?
Vai mums var pastāvēt apziņa, ja nav objekta? Jautājums.
What do you think?
Kā jums šķiet?
Yes. So that consciousness without object, what is it conscious of? Because it is consciousness.
Ja var pastāvēt apziņa bez objekta, tad kas ir tas, ko tā apziņa? Jo apziņa ir mazāk apzināta. Consciousness is conscious of itself.
So it does have an object.
Vai tomēr ir objekts?
Emptiness.
Yes, that would be one of the best objects.
Tukšums būtu viens no labākajiem objektiem.
So, but so what I was more, the direction I was more going was that so throughout the day, actually, our consciousness is engaging many objects.
Tas, ko es vēlējos ar šo pateikt, ir, ka dienas laikā mūsu apziņā parādās ļoti daudz dažādu objektu.
So just having an object by itself, that does not mean that it's beneficial or healthy for the mind.
Un tad paša objektā esamība pat par sevi nenozīmē, ka tad būs prātam labvēlīgs.
For example, if we are angry about somebody, and then we can be, that one is almost in a single pointed meditation on anger about that person, and wherever one goes throughout the day, it's always in the back of one's mind, always one part of one's mind is always sort of circling around that person. So my point is, just the mind being focused on any object is not necessarily healthy for us.
Piemēram, tajā situācijā, kad mēs esam uz kādu ļoti dusmīgi, mēs varam būt faktiski tādā vienpunktīgā koncentrēšanās stāvoklī, jo mēs, lai ko arī dienas laikā darītu, nepārtraukt atcerēties šo cilvēku vai fonā nepārtraukt domāt par viņu, tad tas nozīmē, ka pati vienpunktīgā koncentrēšanās nav laba par sevi.
So that's why in the context of meditation we talk about positive objects.
Un tāpēc meditācijas kontekstā mēs runājam par pozitīviem objektiem.
So positive objects, they are objects when we focus our mind on them. So then they bring about mental peace and mental well-being.
Pozitīvi objekti ir tie, kas tad, kad mēs uz tiem koncentrējamies, palīdz radīt lielāku mieru, apziņā un labsajūtu.
So the meditation, our meditation should be like like medicine for the mind.
Meditācijā vajadzētu faktiski būt kā tādiem zālēm priekš prāta.
Take medicine for our physical body, and so then the physical body regenerates, feels better afterwards. So our meditation should be the same for the mind. It should have like a healing effect. The mind actually starts to feel better and build up stronger, more energy. Again, it should be healthy.
Līdzīgi tā kā tad, kad mēs lietojam zāles, pēc kāda laika ķermenis sāk justies daudz labāk un mudrāk, citādā veidā tāpat arī meditācijā vajadzētu iedarboties uz prātu, ka prāta stāvoklis paliek arvien skaidrāks, mierīgāks, pozitīvāks.
So the Dharma objects, so it should be a positive and a positive inner object.
Tad objektiem vajadzētu būt kā pozitīviem, otrkārt iekšējiem.
So there are many in the Dharma, there are many objects.
Un ļoti daudz dažādu tādus objektus.
So of course, the one object that everybody sort of almost knows already about or has already heard about is the coming and going of the breathing.
Viens no objektiem, par kuriem droši vien būs dzirdējis katrs, ir elpas vērošana.
So the coming and going of the breathing, it's more that will bring the mind to a neutral state.
Un, ja mēs vērosim elpas plūsmu, tas palīdzēs prātam nonākt neitrālā prāta stāvoklī.
And so it can help to let go of strong attachment thoughts or thoughts of anger.
Un tas var palīdzēt mazināt un atbrīvoties no domām, kas saistīts ar pieķeršanos vai dusmām.
If it is done correctly.
Ja vien tas tiek pareizā veidā.
For example, a person, they may not actually want to let go of their anger or their attachment.
Piemēram, cilvēki varētu nemaz nebūt vēlme atlaist savas dusmas vai pieķeršanos.
But then, so they hear about meditation, and then they start, as many people do, so one starts with the coming and going of the breathing.
Bet tad viņi padzēra par meditāciju, un tāpat kā vairums cilvēku sāk meditēt, vērojot elpas plūsmu.
So on the one hand, there's this incredibly grasping mind, obsessed with objects of attachment and anger.
Un no vienas puses ir šis prāta stāvoklis, kas ir būtiski pārņemts ar savu dusmu objektu vai pieķeršanās objektu.
Which of course is experienced by the person as a burden.
Un, protams, no cilvēku puses tā savā ziņā ir savu nastu.
Sometimes we feel that we feel that the outside is the problem. We feel other people is the problem. We feel our environment is the problem. But really, it's what sort of presses down on our mind, and makes the mind sort of feel heavy, dark, and so forth, whatever down. So there's this thoughts of anger and attachment.
Un varbūt tā sajūta, ka apkārtējie apstākļi nospiež un cilvēki rada problēmas, bet faktiski tie ir iekšējā pieķeršanās un dusmu prāta stāvokļi, kas ir problēma radītāji.
I sort of feel there's a great misunderstanding when we hear these instructions. Because I think the impression for us is probably, oh, there are thoughts. It's like, you have like one or two objects. But it's not really like that. Then maybe if we look in our mind, we can't find, any thoughts of attachment or ego, I don't know. Anyway, no, not that one, but so the wrong impression, I think very easily one wrong impression that is created is so that we think also there are like individual thoughts of anger or attachment, which are the problem. That's not true.
Bieži vien var būt tā, ka cilvēkiem rodas iespējas, ka galvenā problēma ir kaut kāds atsevišķs, individuāls dusmu vai pieķeršanās domas.
No, the problem is that our mind doesn't know anything else. So, do you know the term suffused? Suffused, well, the mind is pervaded. So there's like, like if you have a park. Do you have a park in Riga? Yeah. So you have a park in Riga, and then people they're collecting in the park. So we can say. The people, so when we think, so the people they represent thoughts. So anger thoughts, they're all dressed black, and attachment thoughts, or let's say, they're all dressed red. So in the park, that's our mind. So then we have to think. So that park, our park, is completely full, with groups of red and groups of dark people. There's maybe in between. Sometimes a little bit white or yellow, very very little. But we have to sort of imagine it, like one of those rock concerts, masses of people, just dark and just black and red. So it's not just one or two thoughts. It's a multitude in our mind, in our heart.
Tā kā tā problēma pat faktiski ir vairāk tas, ka mēs nepazīstam pozitīvos stāvokļus. Un plus vēl atsevišķi tēls, ko mēs varam iztēloties, tips līdzinājums, kas notiek mūsu prātā, mēs varam iztēloties, ka mūsu prāts ir parks, un domas tajā ir daudz cilvēki, kas ir ģērbušies sarkanā ar pieķeršanās, un cilvēki, kas ir salīdzinājumi melnā, tās ir dusmas. Un tad tas parks ir milzīgi, tā kā kāds rokoncerta laukums, un viss tas ir aizpildīts ar cilvēkiem, kas ir ģērbušies tikai melnā vai tikai sarkanā, kas apģērbā ārkārtīgi uz rokas ar tādiem izņēmumiem.
So that is causing a lot of mental unhappiness.
Un šāds te stāvoklis dabīgi rada liels mentāls ciešanas.
So why it is like that? Today, I can't go into that. Maybe tomorrow. But where did I start? So the positive object. So the positive object is there. Now, what does the positive object do? The positive object, because the park, there's only limited space. So for example, if we get more people that are dressed in white, they're sort of pushing, so then the other people, they have less space. So it's a little bit like that. So let's say, the dark people, the people that are dressed in black and in red, they don't like the people that are dressed in white. Automatically, they don't like them. So the more people that are dressed in white come into the park, so the other ones, they go by themselves. They don't like it there anymore. So the meditation is about when we focus on the positive object. So the positive object, it generates a very strong positive mind. The very strong positive mind, automatically it reduces. It reduces the negative thoughts, the attachment and anger thoughts, and through that one feels mentally some well-being.
Un, ja mēs meditācijas laikā fokusējamies uz pozitīvu prāta stāvokli, to var izstāvoties tā, ka šajā parkā, kas ir pārpildīts ar cilvēkiem, kas ir ģērbušies melnā un sarkanā, ieplūst cilvēki, kas ir ģērbušies baltā. Un tiem, kas ir ģērbušies sarkanā un melnā, pirmkārtām tur vairs nepietiek vietas, jo parka teritorija ir un otrām kārtām viņiem nepatīk atrasties vienlaikus tajā pašā teritorijā ar baltajā tērtiem cilvēkiem, un viņi pazūd no tās teritorijas. Un tāpat arī mēs varam saprast, tad, kad mēs izvēlamies šo pozitīvo objektu, tad visi negatīvie prāta stāvokļi samazinās un pazūd.
And they see also one, because it started out with meditating correctly when they're coming and going with the breathing. See, what happens very often is that this person, so there are all these thoughts of attachment and anger in their mind. And so on the one hand, it is experienced as a burden, but at the same time, because of the grasping mind and other reasons, the person doesn't actually want to let go of those thoughts. So, but now they have heard about meditation, and so they have heard about, they have read some book, and they have heard about it on TV. So they think also now, so if I focus my mind on the coming and going of the breath, or if I sit there and, for example, I watch the coming and going of the breathing, or I focus on the coming and going of the breathing, so then that will reduce. So that will make me mentally feel better. So just like sort of thing.
Tad atgriežoties pie tā cilvēka, kuram ir daudz pieķeršanās un dusmu, teiksim, viņš padzird par to, ka meditācija ir lieta, varbūt iek pie kādas grāmatas vai noskatās kādu televīzijas raidījumu, sāk meditēt, fokusējoties uz šo te elpas plūsmu.
Yes. So now what happens is, what can happen is definitely, everybody's different, but this is definitely one situation that can happen. So on the one hand, so the person does not really want to let go of the disturbing thoughts. On the other hand, now they start to focus on the coming and going of the breathing, because they have somehow heard that that is an antidote. So what happens is now somehow the mind is sort of focused on both. On the one hand, there's this obsession, the attachment thoughts. That's why I mentioned before. That's why I made the point. In the teachings, it always says where there are the afflictions, attachment, and anger, and then we sort of maybe get the impression, oh, there's just one or two, but actually it's a lot. There are a lot there, and the mind cannot stop. It can't stop. And sometimes it doesn't want. That's the thing. It doesn't want to stop. Sometimes we as a person, we don't want to stop. It makes us unhappy, but we don't want to stop. Then we hear, so now I can focus on the coming and going of the breathing, that will help. But actually what happens is the person focuses on both. And then when that happens, the mind just becomes more uptight.
Tajā situācijā, ja tāds mērķis vai nolūks palaist vaļā savu pieķeršanos vai dusmas un vienlaikus ir vēlmē veikt šo kā pozitīvo lietu vārdā meditāciju, tā kā ir šie abi fokusa punkti aktīvi, gan elpa, gan pieķeršanās objekti. Prāts faktiski tajā brīdī tā kā paliek tikai tāds saspīlētāks. Un tieši tāpēc es arī iepriekš minēju, ka cilvēkiem rodas tā ideja reizēm, ka varbūt ir tikai pāris negatīvās domas vai prāta stāvokļi. Tas tā nav, jo mums ir ārkārtīgi milzīgs skaits šo negatīvo jaukas esošo prāta stāvokļi.
So that's why, like at the beginning of the meditation session today, I mentioned also to make the mental determination. So for the time of the meditation, so not to think about those things.
Un tieši tāpēc es arī šovakar meditāciju sāku vārdiem par to, ka to laiku, ko mēs veltīsim meditācijai, mēs skaidri nolemjam, ka tajā laikā mēs nedomāsim par parastajām ikdienas lietām vai rūpēm.
So, for example, what could happen is, so at the beginning of the meditation, so we try to make this determination. Also for the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'm not going to think about these things. But there's like resistance inside. So already we know this is not going to happen. And that's sort of like I think that's sort of an example. Because what I was talking about, so the incorrect meditation on the coming and going of the breathing, or the correct meditation on the coming of the meditation on the coming and going of the breathing is so that the mind actually lets go of those objects. But this can be very hard through our own experience. And sometimes we need to trick even the mind. And sometimes when, for example, if we have a worry, like sometimes people have a worry about, sometimes, often we have a worry about our future, like our material future. And then also for the mind not to think about that, even just for 5 or 10 minutes, it's like incomprehensible. But so for the meditation on the coming and going of the breathing to work, so that's what we need to do. We need to sort of set that aside and sort of just focus the mind very gentle on the coming and going of the breathing. But if that obsession doesn't stop, so if you don't let go, and then sort of at the same time sort of trying to grasp onto the coming and going of the breathing, that's like anti-meditation.
Bieži vien var gadīties tā, ka mēs varam pat pateikt, ka labi uz šīm 5 vai 10 minūtēm es nedomāju par ikdienas rūpēm vai vietām un tā tālāk, bet kaut ko citas arī mēs varam saprast, ka mēs sev mānam un tas tā nenotiks. Un tas nozīmē, ka ja mēs nespējam palaist uz šo meditācijas laiku vaļā tās ikdienas rūpes, tas nozīmē, ka tā meditācija nepildīs savu funkciju un nebūs efektīva. Un tā kā bieži vien ir tā, ka mēs domājam nopietnies par to, kas tiks tālāk, kas būs ar mums nākotnē, palīdzīgi. Mums var pat nākties nedaudz piltīgi apieties ar savu prātu, lai panāktu to, ka mēs spējam atlaist visu šīs lietas. Un tāpēc bieži vien palīdz tas, ja mēs tādu maigu, vieglu, pieņemošu attieksmi, vienkārši ļaujam tai uzmanībai koncentrēties tikai uz ātri.
And then so there's no mental well-being, so meditation becomes incredibly tiring. And then of course one doesn't want to repeat that experience.
Bet, ja mēs paliekam šajā te stāvoklī, kur mūsu prāts ir fokusēts uz daudzām uzsvietojumām no lietām, tad tā meditācija neizdodas un ar to arī nekas patīkams neasociējās.
Yeah, so we need to in the meditation. So in the meditation, we need to focus the mind on the positive object as completely as possible without forcing the mind.
Un tāpēc mums ir nepieciešams meditācijas laikā fokusēties uz šo iekšējo objektu, bet darīt to tādā veidā, ka mēs nespiežam prātu.
So, for example, some people they like to meditate on the clear nature of the mind. It's also you need to, then the mind needs to be completely absorbed and just placed on the clear nature of the mind in a gentle way. And then so we really need to have that ability, so like to let go of those other things for that time.
Ļoti bieži cilvēkiem patīk meditēt uz prāta skaidro dabu, un lai tāda meditācija sekmīgi izdotos, tad pilnīgi noteikti ir nepieciešams, lai prāts būtu sapūtis ar šo objektu un viss pārējais būtu atstāts ārpusē.
So if we can't do that, so in our mind we don't actually want to let go of those other objects. And at the same time we want to do the meditation, then it becomes, then it just becomes a very tiring experience.
Un ja tā, ka mēs faktiski negribam atlaist vienas rūpes vai pieķeršanos vai dusmas vai citus prāta stāvokļus, tad fokusēšanās papildus uz meditācijas objektu kļūst par ļoti nopietnošu pieredzi.
Like for example, if sometimes our mind is obsessed with another person, if we generate strong attachment for that person, and so then we can't have it both ways. So either we want to meditate, single-pointedly, on a positive object, or we want to obsess about that person. So we can't do both at the same time.
Var gadīties tā, ka mūsu prāts ir pārņemts ar kādu personu un ir neiespējami domāt vēl par kaut ko citu. Tad mums ir jāizvēlas, vai mēs vēlamies būt pārņemti ar šo cilvēku un turpinātāju būt, vai arī mēs vēlamies fokusēties uz to meditācijas objektu, jo abus reizē dabūt
or similarly, if we are really angry about somebody, and so we're going up in our mind is turning around, and then we have heard about meditation, so we want to meditate, but we need in our mind, we need to identify, so that anger needs to be identified as the problem, and there needs to be there needs to be at least in our mind some motivation. That needs to now, I need to let go of that. That we are 100% able to let go, that's very unlikely anyway. But at least that we have the willingness, so that we think, at least for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 1 minute or whatever, I need to now let go of that. So it needs to be at least identified in our mind in this way. And then, so we have the positive object. And then, by focusing the mind on the positive object, then we can, take the mind away from that anger. But in our mind, we don't have the willingness. There's the situation. We don't really have the willingness to let go of that. And then it's not productive.
Tur nebūt divām lietām, pirmkārt, spējai identificēt, ka mūsu uzmanība būs ir pārņemts ar dusmām vai pietiešanos vai ko citu. Un otrām kārtām ir jābūt šai vēlmei to atlaist vaļā un nefokusēties uz to, vismaz meditācijas brīdī. Un dabīgi, ka mēs nebūsim spējīgi par visiem 100% to aizmirst un nolikt pavisam malā, bet vismaz ir jābūt šeit vēlmei to noņemt. Tad ir iespējams, ka meditācija notiek sekmīgi.
For example, a major cause for mental unhappiness is worry. So then also it's the same thing. We want to be heard, or meditation is good for the mind. But there's this type of personality. Somehow they feel you need to worry. So that even it's like you have to trick the mind, and then you can see how strong it is. That you can say to the mind, well, even if you don't think about this for 1 or 2 minutes, the object will still be there. So you can worry about it again as much as you want after 1 or 2 minutes. Even then, sometimes the mind can't let go. And so I think there needs to be some identification in our mind. For us, there needs to be some identification. This is actually the worry. For example, just constant worrying about something, creating a mental projections that cause mental anxiety continuously. So that is actually the problem. That actually needs to be reduced. So if we have this recognition before we start to meditate, then that's really, I think it's important.
Viens no lielākajiem traucētiem, arī vieglāk izplatītākajiem, kas traucē meditēt, ir uztraukšanās vai raizēšanās. Un, ja tas notiek prātā, tad ir diezgan neiespējami, ka notiek laba meditācija. Un tamdēļ var nākt par labu tas, ka mēs pierunātu prātu vismaz uz 2 minūtēm, nolikt malā visas rūpes, raizes, uztraukumus. Un nav teikts, ka mums tas izdosies, bet atkal, ja vismaz tā spēja skaidri atpazīt, kas mūsos notiek un kā tas notiek, un vēlēšanās tiešām malā to uz meditācijas laiku, tad ir daudz lielāka iespēja, ka meditācija notiek sekmīgi.
So then we work the object. So another very powerful positive object is the visualization of the Buddha or a Buddha.
Viens no spēcīgākajiem meditācijas objektiem ir vai no vēsturiskais Buddha vai vispār kāds no Buddha.
So visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha or Tahara or Vajrasattva, would we feel comfortable in this space in front of ourselves? And then the meditation is not really done with a grasping. Sometimes people think, oh, it needs to be a grasping mind. That's not. I mean, the focus needs to be single pointed, but the single pointed focus doesn't come through the grasping. But so anyway, by focusing the mind single pointedly on a visualization, that is also a very powerful object to generate very strong, powerful, positive mental states. And also, so if it is done correctly, to generate mental well-being or bliss.
Un, ja mēs spējam vienpusīgi fokusēties uz kādu no Budas tēliem, vai tad būtu Shakyamuni Buda, vai Tahara, vai Vajrasattva, vai vēl kāds, tad, ja tas tiek veikts pareizā veidā, tad ir ļoti iedarbīgi, un tas spēj radīt labsajūtu un noskaidrot prātu. Bet ir svarīgi, ka tas netiek veikts ar tādu algadīgu vēršanos, jo reizēm var šķist, ka tas ir tas veids, kā vienpunktīgi fokusēties. Tas tā nav. Šī vienpunktīgā fokusēšanās ir jāpanāk bez kaut kādas alkainas vēršanās.
So what we've been, and there are also other objects that will become too much. So what we have been talking about now, until now, is more single-pointed meditation, and there's a lot of the meditation on the coming and going of the breathing, the meditation on the clarity of the mind. So they have a very strong non-conceptual aspect.
Tad ir vēl arī cita meditācijas objekti, bet visu uzskaitīt būtu par daudz. Un mēs aplūkojam šo vienpunktīgo koncentrēšanos un tādiem meditācijas objektiem kā elpa vai prāta tīrā skaidrā daba, piemīt zināms nekonceptuāls aspekts.
But now, so a person may feel, well, a person may actually feel uncomfortable with the idea of having to stop thinking or to reduce thought.
Bet cilvēkiem varētu būt neattīgas sajūta, ja viņiem šķiet, ka viņiem ir jāatlaiž domāšanu pavisam.
And they are probably right.
Iespējams, viņiem pārēc tā domāt.
So, of course, at the beginning, because we have some idea, so our problem comes from the mind, and then there's just some kind of wish, or if it would just stop everything. That we don't differentiate positive mental thoughts, negative mental thoughts. We just want it to stop.
Var gadīties tā, ka mēs esam tik ļoti pārņemti visvisādām domām, ka mēs justos laimīgi, ja tas beigtos vispār, un mēs nešķirojam, vai tās ir labas domas vai sliktas domas.
So for example, there's a type of personality that they may not feel comfortable for them. So the idea of, why should I stop thinking? It may not feel comfortable.
Bet pastāvēt arī personas tipi, kuriem nav pieņemama doma vai nerodas ērta sajūta, domājot, ka ir jātiek vaļā no domām pavisam.
And then, so if they think, the meditation on the coming and going of the breathing is the only meditation there is, so then they may conclude, meditation is not enough for me.
Un, ja viņi padziļinā domā, ka elpošanas meditācija ir vienīgais meditācijas veids, tad viņi var secināt, ka meditācija nav priekšnāca.
So I feel it's important also to mention so that there is also analytical meditation.
Un tāpēc es uzskatu par vērtīgi piezīmēt, ka pastāv daudz meditācijas veidu, proti analītiskā meditācija.
So where we use the conceptual process. So instead of stopping the conceptual process, we use the conceptual process.
Un analītiskās meditācijas laikā mēs neatbrīvojamies no konceptuālā procesa, mēs to tieši otrādi izmantojam.
And so it is more about generating positive mental thoughts.
Un tas process vairāk vērsts uz pozitīvo domu radīšanu.
So in that sense one could say, well, meditation is thinking positive thoughts, but being able to do so volitionally, on purpose, and also continuously and strongly.
Un tad var teikt, kā
strongly, I think that will come only later, so if you can say that.
Un tad var teikt, ka meditācija ir koncentrēšanās uz pozitīvu domu un pozitīvu domu radīšanu, pozitīvu stāvokļu radīšanu apzinātā veidā, un tas vēlāk šis process ir pietiekoši attīstīts, tas ir pietiekoši spēcīgi.
So like when we come home in the night or in the evening from work, then we sit down for 5 or 10 minutes of meditation. But the mind, there's absolutely no way that the mind is I don't say it's everybody like that, but I think there are many people that told me, so there's absolutely no way that the mind could somehow do any kind of, of those single-pointed or non-conceptual meditations. And that's completely natural.
Ir vien cilvēki man ir teikuši, ka vakarā atnākot pēc darba mājās, tās 5 vai 10 minūtes, ko veltīt meditācijai, ir neiespējami veltīt tādai nekonceptuālai, vienpunktīgai meditācijas praksē.
No, but we may think, sort of sitting down, and maybe generating some positive thoughts. So making some efforts to generate some positive thoughts, and it could be up to us what we like as a beginner Buddhist. For example, it's very important to remember the qualities of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or so visualizing the Buddha and thinking about the qualities of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or meditating on love and compassion, meditating on patience, generating thoughts of patience. So we may think, this is actually something that I could do.
Bet, ja mums ir iespējams veikt nevis tikai tādu vienpunktīgo koncentrēšanos, bet izmantot domu procesu, piemēram, pārdomāt tās pozitīvās īpašības un lietas, kas ir saistītas ar Budu, Dharmu un Sanghu, kas ir svarīgi budistiem iesācējiem, vai arī veikt mīlošās labestības meditāciju, vai pārdomāt pacietības iegūmus. Tad šāds meditēšanas veids daudziem cilvēkiem ir pieņemamāks un arī vieglāks reizē.
And then we will find that if we by generating, so this can be sometimes also just by ourselves, just sitting down. It could be a little bit difficult, it could be easier, like if you read a book, for example, like a book by the Dalai Lama, or some books with verses, Dharma verses that we like. And then so we don't even need to sit up straight, we can, but we don't need at the beginning. We can just, by the evening anyway, one is a little bit lazy and tired, so just lean back on the Dharma book, and read that paragraph about compassion by the Dalai Lama, so that the mind is put in that direction. And we're just trying not to think about that, following that thought for a few minutes. And then when we find, now the mind is starting to wander off, we can't sustain it for long, and then we could read another paragraph. And then we will notice over time, or immediately or over time, we will notice, this is actually beneficial for the mind. This feels healthy for the mind.
Un ja tāda formāla praksa, kad mēs nosējamies un paši saviem spēkiem mēģināt analītiski meditēt, ja tas mums šķiet reizēm pārāk ērti, tad var darīt tā, ka mēs ņemam kādu zināmu metodu, piemēram, iniciatīvas dāvājumus, lasam kādu rīkopu, kurš teicis par līdzjūtību, tad nav pat obligāti, ja mēs saglabājam pilnīgi vertikālu un termiņu pozīciju, mēs varam, kā jau vakarā tas mieru gadās atlaisties ērtāk, pārdomāt publikajā, izlasītajā rīkopā, kāds 3 minūtes, 5, un tad, kad mēs jūtam, ka lomas ir aizkrīst pārāk tālu un vairs saistīts ar sākotnējo, tad mēs varam ķerties pie nākošās rīkopas un atkal veikt šo faktiski analītisku meditāciju tādā veidā.
So if we feel, or even that, if we feel with our mind, it could be through all the stress and the excitement of the game, being exposed to all the different objects. So we may feel even this would not be possible for our mind.
Un ja mēs jūtam, ka dienas stresa vai kāpuma krituma dēļ arī šāda lieta nav iespējama priekš mums.
Then another possibility is we could just recite a mantra.
Vēl cita iespēja ir, ka mēs vienkārši skaitam mantru.
So that's also the great yogis, they do that. The mind, due to tiredness and other conditions, is not a suitable vehicle for meditation, and they recite mantras.
Un ir tādi, un arī lieli jogi, tajā brīdī, kad kāds tādu citu apstākļu dēļ vairs nav piemērots meditācijai, tad ir iespējams skaitīt mantras tādu.
So we can use the mantra of Chandrisi, or there's the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, and we can just recite those mantras so verbally, but not necessarily loudly, but verbally or quietly. And so I think I just let the mantra do the work, because otherwise the mind is too tired anyway. So we just think, I'm not going to worry about those. I'm not going to worry about whether this meditation is going to be successful or not. I'm not going to worry about whether I get mental peace or happiness. I'm just going to sit here now for 5 or 10 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I'm just going to recite the mantra, and then that's going to be it. And whatever effect the mantra has, that will be it.
Was it important that it was recited aloud or not?
No, I said, so like the correct way of reciting the mantra is verbally or quietly.
Verbally or quietly.
Verbally or quietly. So that is in the scriptures, that's what it says, the correct way for reciting the mantra.
Var izmantot pat, piemēram, četreizīgu mantru, un būtu vai Marīgas mantru, ētālu vai vienmēr sakot, to mantru var skaitīt verbāli, dzirdami, bet piepusinātā veidā. Un tas ir tas veids, kā arī rakstos, tas ir ieteikts kā labākais veids, kā skaitīt mantras. Un tad, kad mēs skaitam šo mantru, mēs varam atlaist visas citas vietas, ļaut, lai mantra pati dara savu darbu.
Anyways, one of the most important things is that we actually do meditate. So the meditation is really a lot about learning through doing.
Mēs diezgan daudz esam pārunājuši un atgriežoties atkal pie tā, kas ir svarīgākais ir tas, ka meditācija tiek veikta un praktizēta. Un meditāciju mēs mācāmies caur to, ko mēs to darām. Tā kā Tagad mums ir laiks jautājumiem, ja tāda ir.
Kā tieši tā labāk uzskaitīt mantru? Kādā veidā? Kāds vajadzētu izklausīt? Pareizākam veidā?
Could you demonstrate what is the best way how to recite a mantra?
The best way to recite a mantra is verbally. But to say so verbally means actually from the mouth, not just thinking it. But it's what to say so quiet that if a person is sitting beside us, that they can't hear it.
Tātad mēs to darām tā, ka redzams, ka uzstāsts un mēs paši noteikti dzirdam, bet cilvēks, kas sēž mums blakus, var to arī nedzirdēt.
There is one more.
Okay.
Tu iepriekš būtu labāk skaitīt ātri vai lēni?
Is it better to recite the mantra slowly or fast?
How it is comfortable for the mind, how it is comfortable. At the beginning, maybe it's a little bit better to recite it more slow so that one identifies all the syllables. And then over time, usually it becomes faster anyway. But so what one does not need to do is one does not need to do this what is pronounced slow.
Tad skaitīt var tādā veidā, kas šķiet vispiemērotākais pašam tajā brīdī, bet parasti tas ir tā, ka tiek sākts tādā lēnākā veidā vai skaidri atpazīstamas zīmes, un parasti priekšējot mantras skaitīšanu paliek ātrākāk, bet noteikti nav nepieciešams ļoti uzsvērtu lēni garīgi stieptu to mantru skaitīšanu.
Kaut kur dzirdēju, laikam, Dalai Lamās par to mantru skaitīšanu, teica, ka nav jēgas, varbūt, es pareizi sapratu, ja nav izpratnes par to, ko tā mantra nozīmē, un vai tā skaitīšana pati par sevi, viņa, nav pretrunā ar tādu veidu skatījumu, kad jābūt tā izpratnē, un tur izpratne nav kaut būs prāta, bet te mēs to prātu atslēdzam.
He has heard that His Holiness Lama has said that it's not necessary to recite mantra if you don't know what it means, or even it's better not to recite mantra if you don't know what it means. This goes against what you said, that mantra does its own work itself.
No, I don't. I mean, His Holiness sometimes he answers individual questions, but as a generality, I never heard His Holiness say it is better not to recite a mantra if we don't know what it means. That's it's very unlikely that he would say that. I've never heard that.
Tātad viņas pretīgi Dalai mēdz atbildēt uz jautājumiem individuālā veidā, bet es nekad neesmu dzirdējis, ka viņš teiktu, ka vispārīgu likumu, ka nedrīkst nav ieteicams skaitīt mantrus, ko nozīmē.
Es nedomāju, ka tāds vispārīgs likums nav viņam, es ar tādu nedzirdējis, nav viņa likuma tāda, bet tajā gadījumā es atceros, konkrēti bija par Romani Padme Hum sievieti, viņam jautāja, kura visu dzīvi ir skaitījusi to mantru un nav zinās, ko tas par nozīmē. Un tad diezgan tomēr kritiski izteicās par to, ka, tomēr ir jāsaprot, tā cik es sapratu no tā.
So, he's referring to a situation where a woman has said to His Holiness that she has recited Om Mani Padme Hum almost all her life without knowing what it means, and then His Holiness said that this situation is not the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. So, first of all, we have to differentiate if His Holiness says that is not the best, of course that's not the best. But just because it's not the best doesn't mean that we don't need to do it. Or that just because it's not the best doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, because who of us can do the best?
Tas no vēlamākais variants nenozīmē, ka to vispār tā nevajag darīt, jo kurš varēja izdarīt visu 100% vēlamākajā veidā.
But His Holiness always says this, that reciting prayers without having an understanding of Buddhist philosophy, it's like one's just reciting the mere words. So His Holiness is always, very much encouraging the individual to generate an understanding of Buddhist philosophy, so of course, so in that context, so if the person is reciting Om Mani Padme Hum all their life and not making an effort to understand principles of Buddhist philosophy, then of course that is a situation that could be better.
Bet tas, ko viņš arī saka, ir, ka nav īsti jēgas skaitīt kādus dziedājumus vai lūkšanas, nesaprotot to nozīmi. Un tā doma vienkārši ir tāda, ka reiz viņus skaitot un pacenties uzzināt, ko tas nozīmē un kā tas darbojas un palīdzīgi.
Jā, jo tā sajūta arī bija, ka viņi teica, ka viņi daudziem lamām pat ir prasījusi, ko nozīmē, un viņi nav varējuši paskaidrot, un beigās viņš pats tā man paskaidro apmēram, ko tā mantra nozīmē.
This woman said that she had asked many teachers before what this mantra meant, and they weren't able to answer, and only His Holiness gave a kind of an appropriate explanation for that.
Yeah, this I don't know. This I don't know. And, it's also not really. That's really another question, but that's another point. Also we don't know whom that person asked.
Maybe she didn't listen good enough.
Well, these are this. I think these are this kind of individual situations. The meaning of the mantra is not really a hidden meaning. So the explanation is given, quite frequently, at least in our organization, frequently. But so the main point was, the starting point was, do we need to know the mantra? Do we need to know the meaning of the mantra to get the benefit? And that is a definite no.
Minētais ir individuāls gadījums un jāzina, kam šī sieviete vajadzēja mantras nozīmi, jo tas mantras nozīmi galīgi nav nekas apslēpts un vismaz mūsu organizācijā diezgan bieži tiek skaidrots, ko tā nozīmē, bet atgriežoties pie sākotnējā punkta, vai ir iespējams gūt labumu no mantras skaitīšanas, pat nezinot pilnīgi, ko tā nozīmē, pilnīgi noteikti ir iespējams gūt kaut kā labumu.
Will we get more benefit if we know the meaning of the mantra? Then that's yes.
Un tāpat arī, vai mēs gūsim lielāku labumu no tās mantras skaitīšanas, ja mēs zināsim, ko tā nozīmē, gan arī, jā.
Question related also to reciting mantras. Is it important that all the word sounds are produced in some correct way? If there is some word that is pronounced a bit wrongly, does it somehow badly influence this?
No. Of course, the mantras, they are all in Sanskrit. So to pronounce them properly, we would really need to study Sanskrit. So that's only very few people they do. So and then you get the different dialects, and I think one of the main things is, the mantra, if the pronunciation is sort of right, I mean, you can't say a totally wrong, different word. So, but the pronunciation, that's the sort of, and it gets very subtle. So I think that's not really necessary to get the benefit of the mantra.
I was meaning that not in the nuances like dialect way, but if I just purely read the mantra without hearing it, then some words, as I read them, sound quite different from when I read some special, when I hear some experienced person reciting them.
Well, sometimes it depends on how the mantra is transliterated. Is it transliterated in the there are different systems for transliteration. So some transliteration they focus on just the pronunciation of the mantra. Then some transliterations they focus on all the syllables of the mantra. So also all the aspects of the syllable that are not individually pronounced, that they are present in the transliteration. Then it also depends, which target language is the transliteration for. Because not every language will read the alphabets in the same way. So a transliteration for a English person will be different. Will need to be different from a transliteration for a German person. So there are all kinds of things to consider. So to get the meaning, if that's your question, can I just get the mantra? How can I just understand the words of the mantra? How I need to recite it purely from reading? So then it's probably better to listen to some recordings. Like I think for all the major mantras, definitely can get recordings like on the FBMT website. I'm sure one can get. But the main thing, one main thing to know about the mantras is that the mantra. So the mantras, they are the speech, of the deity. So they are the words of the deity. And that, so the power of the mantra, so in a sense the mantra is the deity, so the mantra is the deity. And so that's very important. And also, how does the power of the mantra come about? Through the dedications of that Buddha. Also when the Buddha was a bodhisattva, and also when the Buddha is a Buddha, the bodhisattvas, for example, they generate prayers. They make a lot of prayers. For example, or may in the future, may people be liberated from their worries, or may people be liberated from their sufferings merely by hearing my name. So these kinds of prayers that then they bring about the dependent arising. That then later when people recite the mantra, they receive their benefits. So that's also good to know. So there's this dependent arising. But the Buddha and the Bodhisattva, they made actually many prayers out of compassion. That in the future, may people just by hearing my name, and many of the mantras, they're in fact, they are like names of the deity. Or then the person will may the person by reciting my mantra be relieved of their suffering. So it's good to know there's this dependent arising there from the side of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva. And so having that understanding, and then having the understanding that the mantra is in fact the deity, because on the level of the Buddha, on the level of an arhat, for example, we don't say that the body of the arhat is the arhat. So if somebody has just attained liberation from cyclic existence, so their mind is liberated from cyclic existence, we will say the person is an arhat, but we will not refer to the body of the person as an arhat. But with the Buddha it's different. The Buddhas, they have really gone beyond. So with the Buddha, like every aspect of the Buddha's continuum is referred to as a Buddha. So also the body of the Buddha is referred to as Buddha. And so also the speech of the Buddha is, the actual speech of the Buddha is referred to as Buddha. So when we recite the mantra, we can meditate. Or this is actually the verbal manifestation of Chenrezig. And so then we can meditate. So it is sort of pervading our being, our continuum. That's a very simple meditation. And putting one's trust, so that's reciting the mantra with faith. So, of course, if you have great intellectual abilities, and then that's one situation. But so the situation, and we are not tired, then that's all very good. But before the situation was also, the mind is tired. It doesn't want to think about anything else. But still, we want to practice some dharma. So here we can just simply let go, simply say also, I let the mantra do the work. So we place our faith in the mantra. And that definitely works. Also through repetition. So that's important to know that one aspect how the mantra becomes effective is through repetition. So if you have repeated the mantra already like many thousands of times, then the mantra is more effective if you just recite it once.
Jautājums bija par to, vai nepieciešams...
He seemed like he could understand English.
Other people also.
Yes.
Tad jautājums bija par to, vai nepieciešams skaitīt mantru maksimāli precīzi izrunu, vai būt efekti no tās. Atbilde ir nē, tas nav nepieciešams, jo principā mantras ir sanskritā, un sanskrita mūsdienās pārvalda ārkārtīgi maz cilvēku, un tas nozīmē, ka mums ir jāstudē ilgi un dikti, lai tiktu pie tās pareizās sanskrita izrunas, bet tas nav nepieciešams maksimālam rezultātam no mantras skaitīšanas. Un tas, kā tā mantra darbojās, kāpēc viņa darbojās, faktiski ir tā kā tās dievības, tā mantra pārstāv dievības runu, un faktiski var teikt arī, ka tā mantra ir dievība. Piemēram, tad ir bijuši bodhisattvas pagātnē, kas ir tapuši par Budām, un kamēr viņi bija bodhisattvas, viņi veltīja tos savus radītos nopelnus, lai nākotnē cilvēki radīto nopelnu rezultātā, skaitot šo mantru vai vārdu, būtu tādus un tādus rezultātus, nomierināt prātu vai citas labās īpašības attīstīt un tam līdzīgi. Un kāpēc var teikt, ka tā mantra ir tā dievība, ir tā, ka tad, kad lūguma kļūst par ārkārtu, respektīvi tiek atbrīvots tās būtnes prāts atbrīvojās, tas ķermenis netiek uzskatīts par atbrīvotu. Bet tad, kad būtne sasniedz budas stāvokli, tad visa šī apziņas plūsma un kopums tiek uzskatīts par pilnīgi apgaismot. Gan apziņa, gan ķermenis. Un tad budām par apgaismot tiek uzskatīts gan ķermenis, gan prāts. Un tādēļ arī tad, kad mēs skaitam to mantru, faktiski mēs varam arī koncentrēties un vērst savu uzmanību uz to, ka mūsu to būtību caurauž tā dievības būtība. Tādējādi arī tā mantra iedarbojās tādā veidā. Un atgriežoties vēl pie vienas lietas, tas piemērs, ko es minēju iepriekš atpakaļ, bija par to situāciju, kad cilvēks ierodas mājās noguris un negluži ar pasākajām intelektuālajām spējām un tādā brīdī skaitīt mantru neperfektā veidā, vienalga būs iedarbīgi, bet, protams, ja cilvēks ir intelektuāli ļoti asu tādu izprotojušo prātu, tad, ja ir iespējams tikt pie precīza skanējuma mantrai, tas mums var palīdzēt.
to very much. And so maybe we can just spend briefly maybe a minute or two, so just dedicating the merit to the positive potential that we have generated by discussing the Dharma, thinking about the Dharma, meditating and so forth. Dedicating that merit to the welfare of all sentient beings. So we can just think we're sending it out like light and to all sentient beings, and so the other sentient beings so they become enlightened.
Un tad tos pozitīvos nodomus enerģiju, ko mēs šovakar esam radījuši klausoties un pārdomājot šīs tēmas, mēs varam iztēloties kā gaismu un labu vēlējumus, ko mēs sūtam visos virzienos, līdz tās nonāk pie visām